Hey there, everyone. It's Camber here with the Yo Pro No. I am here today with Seth Willis, 26-year-old culture coach in the Bay Area in California. Thanks so much for being here, Seth.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Camber.
So, one thing that I always like to share before I start an interview is talking about how we were connected. So, this one, we go way back. It's kind of funny. We were talking about it before the interview, but Seth and I, knew each other in high school, and I can't even remember when it was specifically that we met. Like we always seem to be in the same circles, and it's just so fun and cool to see you on the show today. So thank you so much for being here and talking about our background and where we're from. Let's just get right into it by hearing about your background.
Yeah, sure. From Baltimore, Maryland area, as you are yourself, born and raised in Pikesville, Owings Mills, so kind of in the Baltimore County area. Folks who don't know, went to same school, all boys school, from first grade all the way to high school. And looking at colleges, wanted to make sure I kept that small school environment feel, really found value in that individualized attention and support. So all the schools I was looking at were pretty small, with between 1,000, 4,000 students. And I ended up landing on Loyola University, Maryland, which is 15 minutes away from my high school, 30 minutes away from my house. Still lived on campus though to have that full experience. Mm-hmm. Loyola just was the best fit for me, just happened to be very, very close. Made some really great friends, really great experiences. Different interview to talk about all those things, but long story short, ended up with a communications major, advertising with a marketing minor. And then immediately after, went and pursued my MBA. Wanted to get a business degree to kind of complete the scope of education and to have something else in my back pocket, so that wherever I wanted to go or wherever I wanted to do, however high I wanted to go in any organization, I knew I could, even if I didn't use it fully, just to make sure I had that, to not put any barriers on myself. So graduated college, undergrad in 2017, grad school in 2018. It was an expedited program. And then for about a half a year, just enjoying the time off, recognizing I wasn't going to have that once I started working. So, did some traveling, visited some friends in other cities, places I hadn't been before, which was really, really nice.
Great.
And when the time came for me to really start applying to jobs, I was looking pretty much everywhere to switch it up. I have been in Baltimore my whole life. Wanted to see if there was anything else out there, and knew that if it didn't work out, I had somewhere else to go. I could always come back home. So wanted to open things up, and ended up in the Bay Area through a mutual friend, or through one of my friends in college. She was working at a PR firm at the time, thought I'd be a good fit. So I moved out in San Francisco. I had the first interview, moved to San Francisco within 3 weeks. So it was pretty much up and left everything. Made that switch. PR firm was not the best fit professionally. I did have, I did make a lot of good friends, but not the best fit professionally. And different story about how I got to where I am now, but was able to finagle some of the work I was doing and make this transition to a company called Great Place to Work, a trusted authority, or the trusted authority, global authority in workplace culture, workplace experience. If folks are familiar with the Fortune 100 best companies to work for, the magazine publishes that list every year. We're the company behind the data. So we're the company that puts together the ranking, the methodology for that. So
wow, that's amazing. Good context.
Yeah, no problem. And if you ever see that red box that says Great Place to Work certified, that's also us. So all the certification, all of that comes from employee survey. It's all data driven, not just a submission, not just writing, but really a quantitative looks at that. And what my role is as a culture coach is to walk our customers through their results in the platform, through the data, to see where their strengths and opportunities lie, as a culture for the people to experience and really show them the connection between being good for people and being good for business. If we're talking about some hard data points against, looking at those Fortune 100 best companies against the Russell 3000, just in 2020, those Fortune 100 best companies outperformed the Russell 3000 index by 16%. So even in the pandemic, really strong correlation between those two things. And over the past 20 odd years, those Fortune 100 best companies have outperformed the Russell 3000 by 3x or 3x plus. So real data, real numbers show that if you do invest in people, it's going to affect your bottom line in a positive way.
So I'm going to pause right there because, wow, you just covered a lot. I mean, you said you were looking for a change. You wanted to get out of Baltimore, and you definitely did. You made your way across the country, which is great. I mean, kudos to you for getting out there and doing it and trying something. But second thing I want to mention is this role. And a lot of people who reach out to me, a part of our audience, they ask, well, how can you end up doing one thing when you went to school for something completely different, or you started at point A, how did you get to point F? Or, you know what I mean? Like that kind of mindset. So looking back when you were in school, how did you get to this point, and what did that process look like when you started? So thinking about it through the lens of somebody who might be interested in this industry or has no idea what this industry is about, like talk a little bit more about that, and pick a piece of that question however you'd like.
Yeah, great question. I think I was able to parlay my interests and skills in research the most. So even when I was in the advertising, communications, marketing bucket, the thing that interested me the most was how the data could influence the strategy, data could influence your messaging, the markets you went to, even the words and the colors you use for a campaign and the mediums, all those things. Even for my senior year capstone, it was basically that capstone class we were a marketing or advertising firm. We had a real client. We had Under Armour come. They were trying to market this new product line. I don't know if it actually took off, but either way, trying to market this new product line and had us as a group, as a class, come up with the concept. And I was the head of the research group for that. So even then, really trying to use the numbers and figure out where we could push those things forward. In grad school, taking that further with statistics. My first statistics class was in grad school, but even then, recognizing that it's not always math, it's just using the data, using the numbers to influence those decisions and being able to communicate those things pretty clearly.
Yep. So I love
that. From an education standpoint, it was taking that research background, being able to parlay that, and even in the interview for this role, it was being presented with a data set and being asked, what are the trends that you're seeing here? What would be your recommendations? And I was just looking through and saying, well, there's a gap here in this group based on this experience. So I think if they focused here, they could make those kind of differences. So recognizing that it's, once again, not math, but recognizing those patterns in the numbers to drive that decision.
Right. And I think that that's a great point and very applicable for a lot of different industries. It's looking back at your history in a sense and seeing what you liked in certain subjects or something, certain degrees, and figuring out how you can almost pick that up and put it into a career. Yep. And that's very applicable for all paths, I believe. And that's a message I really try to get across to the audience. So thank you for really alluding to that.
Yeah.
Now, talking about diving into your job a little bit more, tell us about a hardship since you have been in the young professional world. So when did you start your work in PR? Was that in 2018?
Early 2019.
Early 2019. Okay, so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about a hardship, I think that would be the one. Started in March 2019, moved out here a week after my 25th birthday, 24th birthday, whatever that birthday was in 2019. moved out here. The PR firm was a boutique PR firm working with a lot of startups. So this is before I joined, but they were part of the group that launched Tile, those little
Yeah.
keychain Bluetooth things, right? So
Mhm.
they helped launch that group, and I had some tech experience in an internship, wanted to stay in that space. But when I got there, I recognized that PR wasn't my passion, didn't really light the fire for me to go to work every single day. I think I was more focused on, like I said, the research, how we can drive things from a business standpoint, business decisions versus trying to get placements in magazines or in news outlets and things like that. And the work is pretty hard in general, even if you do like it, but when you don't, it's even more difficult. So being in a spot where I am, not looking forward to doing my job every day. The people are cool, still friends with those folks, but when you talk about the day-to-day work, not enjoying that too much. And then on top of that, different story, but broke my left kneecap in that whole process. So I'm
Okay, I
working
want to
from
talk to you about that after.
right. Working from home in bed on this laptop, not really enjoying it, trying to figure out how to move forward in another job role. And I've been there, for 4 or 5 months, not a long time, kind of just past my first 90 days and been like, I think I want to get out of here. So focusing there, and if we talk about the hardship, and the thing that I think my main takeaway was from that job search in particular was two things. One, really looking at the values and the mission of an organization more than the role itself. And then number two, being ready, like you said, to pick up those things that could be considered those transferable skills and being ready to communicate those things pretty well. So all the companies I was researching, pretty open across roles, but it was what they were doing, the values they had, their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, the things that are kind of the intangibles of a workplace experience, but you're gonna run into those things every single day. That was really driving my search. And then kind of talking about the really pivoting a great place to work. I was talking to someone from the company on behalf of a client. They gave me the spiel for the client. I was like, sounds all good, but how do I get in? How do I get in this organization and being ready? So recognizing that these things can come up, not always through the front door, but sometimes the back door, the side door, and being willing to walk through that door, even if it's just a crack open.
Right. And those are hard lessons to learn too when you're 23, 24. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is a lot of people when I ask the question about hardships, it's normally really early on in their career because it kind of hits you the hardest. And I think, we talked about this even before the interview. There's peaks and valleys in your life. Like there's going to be these really hard moments and times and seasons. And then there's going to be times where it seems easier and there might be some really good things happening, but it's about how you react to that. And so it's very, it's a hard thing to talk about your hardship. So thank you for being vulnerable and open with us. And my last two questions for you, which I know I told you, it feels like the time goes by so quickly when we are interviewing. I wish we could talk all day long, but I have to ask, as a culture coach, tell us, you already told us a little bit about what you do, but give us some tips. So young professionals, a lot of times we're asked, or we're told in interviews to ask about what is your culture like? And I want you to talk about that because I hear a lot of pushback sometimes on those questions because what is a company really going to tell you if it's a bad culture, right? So tell us a little bit about that and then anything else you'd like to share about your industry and your world and what you do every day.
Yeah, great questions, Camber. So asking companies about their culture, how to kind of phrase some of those questions, really asking them how they explicitly see the values lived out on a day-to-day basis is the best way to get to that. So, doing your research, go on the website, see their values, pick one that sticks out the most to you and tell them why, and then ask them, in your day-to-day experience, whether it's the recruiter on the phone, the first person you're talking to, or the hiring manager in the last interview, asking them the value you have of integrity, just random, matters to me because X, Y, and Z. In your day-to-day, how do you see integrity lived out at this organization? And depending on their answer, depending on how they answer that, how specific they go, that can give you a real inclination of how strong the culture is, because those words that are there on the website aren't just words. Those are really the behaviors that folks should be espousing, especially as leaders on a day-to-day basis. Number two, another question to kind of help quantify some of those things that they use to pull out employee experience. How often they're surveying employees, are they running focus groups, are they using an external vendor, their own vendor, just what kind of ways are they quantifying that experience, and what areas they see as strengths and opportunities and the actions that they are taking on. So ask that question. You could hear about benefits, you could hear about communication channels, you could hear about psychological safety, experiences with management. All these types of things can come up with those really specific questions around the culture. So I feel like I'm getting to the real tidbit of this as I'm talking, but approaching those questions about culture as specific as possible so you can get a concrete answer, and that helps whoever you're talking to answer that question a little bit more as well.
I like that a lot. That makes things
broad.
A lot more concise, and just you're gonna get a better answer if you are more specific across the board. So thank you. I love that. Tell us about, or sorry, were you gonna go ahead? Were you keep going?
Oh, no, just part two.
Yeah, part two.
Changes, especially in the pandemic. Our business as a whole has definitely seen an uptick, for better or worse, regarding the motivations for some companies. I think, there are a lot of companies who are recognizing this great resignation, this hiring crunch, the fight for talent, and recognizing how important employee experience is. We do also have a lot of companies who are coming to us from a branding perspective because they want the badge or they want to make a list. But either way, it is a hot market to be in.
A very hot market. And we need to talk offline more about it too, because I mean, every day you see an article about the Great Resignation right now. And so what can you say in a few sentences about that to really give us an idea of what we're dealing with here?
Great question.
I told you I'd throw you some curveballs.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, keeping me on my toes too. It really is an employee market. My partner is a recruiter at a fintech company.
Okay.
Pretty much every person she's talking to has multiple offers in hand already, even on that first screen. So what we are seeing is employees taking that power back. The standards to which they are holding themselves, holding companies has increased. They're not budging on the same things. We talked about this a little bit in the interview, but millennials and Gen Zers especially really being standing firm in those values and things they want out of organizations too. And there are a lot of companies that are meeting people where they're at too. There's some places that aren't budging, but there are a lot of places that are being really fluid with this. We see it with, I think Nike was just most recently, but Bumble did it too, giving folks just a week off in the middle of the year for mental health and to kind of recharge, and recognizing what kind of impact that this pandemic and working from home is having on folks. So, in a nutshell, it is an employee market, and the more firm and clear you can be about the things that matter to you, the better you'll be able to figure out what the right fit is.
Yeah, I think we could probably have a whole other podcast just about this. So thank you for giving us that information, because it gives us almost that sense of power, because it is an employee market right now, but that can also have long-lasting impacts down the road. So what happens next is going to be very interesting, but I think it would almost be fascinating to kind of pencil you in for an interview a year from now and just see what has happened. But I know that we're wrapping things up, so we'll have to talk about that another time. But to wrap things up, tell us about what motivates you, what drives you.
My motivation comes from the impact I can have on other people. I think just my entire life, the things I was interested in from an extracurricular standpoint were really interpersonal and relationship focused, whether it being a peer educator in high school, orientation leader in college, to now working with these organizations and how they can use this data to help their experience. So yeah, in a nutshell, just doing what I can using my talents to help people just have a more positive experience day to day,
Yeah.
and supporting folks who are underrepresented, making sure they have that seat at the table because of all of the people in my life who open those seats up for me.
Right. Well, I think that's a great way to end the interview, Seth. Any last minute words of advice, things that you feel like we didn't cover today?
Last minute words of advice, just to, stay motivated. It's tough if you are looking for work, no matter when you're doing that or how you're doing it. But to stay motivated, and the more clear you can be about what you want, the more clear you'll be able to communicate that, and the easier it'll be to find those companies and those organizations that match your values.
Great. Seth, thank you for your time today. It has been great having you on the Oprano, and we'll make sure that your information is available for people when this interview comes out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Cameron. Happy to be here.